Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stoneface Reactions. I'm Theta, and as you already know, we finished Mushoku Tensei Season 2. Well, it was a week ago for me. I don't know when you people are watching it on YouTube, but of course, at the end of everything, we always do a character ranking, and this time I actually reached out to, well, I would say a number of you. It would be a number, because I don't know how much, well, sorry, I'm fumbling around here. I actually know how many the number is. I have a spreadsheet where a bunch of you have entered in numbers in the normal spectrum of character ranking things that I do here, and you've given me what you thought of each character. For those of you not in the know, let me see if I can bring this up real quick. Alright, just as a quick example, this is the listing of all the characters everyone has voted on, and essentially character. Sorry, it's right off the edge, right off the edge to the left. Sorry, yeah, to the left of everything you're seeing on here is a list of everyone's names. Then you have everybody's rankings and specific things, which is of course distinctive personality, compelling backstory, iconic visual design, emotional resonance, significant character development. And here in the C uh, column is the averages of everybody that contributed. That is essentially everybody who voted and gave their individual numbers, had all their individual numbers averaged out in each category. And then, of course, my numbers, because my numbers don't get averaged, because it's just one guy's numbers. And then the average score in total of your numbers averaged with my numbers. So essentially, this is a group effort to rank all of the characters from Mushoku Tensei. And yes, you weren't looking at just a plain green screen this whole time. I actually do the same thing I do when I have a co-host, which is I hide them from you, so you can't just glance at them without me having to talk first. Otherwise, I'll just be getting spikes throughout the video analytics showing me that everyone who did skip just skipped to when the numbers became visible. Anyway, let's start off here. We obviously have an F tier, which is what let's say um, the highest score you in the audience could have given any individual character would have been 50, which would have been of the 5 categories. You can give them a 1 through a 10, and that would be that you gave them a 10 and everything. So you could give them a 50. And if I gave them a 10 and everything, that would be a 50 for me. Obviously, when you average that out across, I guess, individual scores, that would be a 50, which means an S tier can be anywhere from a 50 to a 45. And then we backtrack from there. So, A tier, guessing that's obviously a 44 through 37. B tier is a 36 through a 29. C tier would be a 28 through 21. D tier would be 20 through 13. And then, of course, F tier would be 12 through 5. So, if you gave everybody a 1 and I gave everybody a 1, sorry, every category a 1 and average out to a 5. So, that said, let's go ahead and raise this up a little bit and we'll see who's an F tier. And we'll see how vehemently people will disagree with me, but they can't totally disagree with me. Part of the audience is responsible. Ada. Ada is the only character who wound up in F tier. I think a lot of people just gave her 1s. I'm obviously not going to say what I gave her, but I mean, she's a not for nothing character, right? She is, crap, I can't remember his name. Dude's mom, who had a crush on Paul and was using Rudy being a troublemaker as an excuse to see Paul. So she has some character development. I mean, she probably doesn't win a lot when it comes to appearance because she does look average for the setting, but not a terrible character. Not like she wasn't totally an F tier. She wasn't like a 5, as you can see. She ranked 10. But yeah, actually, it's been a while since we put a character in F tier in any show, which actually surprised me. A lot of Gundam shows are filled with F tier characters because they're one-off characters, even though Ada was a one-off character. All right, let's raise this up to D tier. Almost gave the game away there. The top of D tier, and I will say this that the order of same numbered individuals is not anything. I would say that Darius typically is like the first of the D tiers, but actually it's him and Rekrana are the same ranking. They're only in that order because obviously Darius' name started with a D and Rekrana's starts with an R, so she was further down the ranking list. But otherwise, we have what Derek Redbat and Gustav Daldana, Mimir, Veskel, all just behind them. We got Patris. Oh, Ada, that's his name. Somar. Somar is Ada's son. I forgot. Bacharu, Genus Half-Ass, my favorite of the names. Laws, Rakis Migardia, Roman, Gablin, Jalil, Edna Rayroon, and Thomas the Kidnapper. I will say something that I have noticed, and I don't know if this is going to spoil things for later up on the board, that once you start seeing it, you'll see it too. A lot of characters from similar arcs got similar rankings, and I don't know if that is something to have plucked out or if that's just random. Like, obviously, our Demon Continent characters, Jalil, Gablin, and Roman, also Bacharu, are all there. Oh, Veskel, they're all in D tier because they're all from the same arc. Now, sometimes this can branch up a little bit into higher tiers because the difference is only like a couple numbers and they might be right there on the edge. But obviously, there's also counter examples like Raucus, like where's the rest of the Midgardias? But also, Edna and Thomas were low tier characters in the Roa. Sorry, my brain is just today. The Roa arc. You know, she's the former Eris's former teacher, and Thomas worked there, so kind of in the similar vein. All right, but let's move up. All right, C tier. We got Ginger York, Kurt, Suzanne, Teresa Aldana, all in the same upper tier. Then we go Luke Notos Greyrat, Pax Chiron, Pergius Dola, Blaze, Almafani, Therese Latria, Timothy, Alphonse, Gallus Cleaner, Miko was surprising considering how little we get of her, but I guess it's as high as she possibly could have gone. Grabble Zafin Asura, and Apilamon Notos Greyrat. Once again, characters that were in the same arc together. Um, Again, Miko and Theresa Latria only separated by 2 points, also in the same arc. What was I pointing out here before? I don't remember too much if Alphonse was in the old Roa arc or in the Return to Roa arc. I don't know what the arcs are called, so I apologize there. But I don't remember Alphonse too much from the original Roa arc. Even so, if he was, he's only separated by like 8 points from the other people. But you also see down here like Timothy, Suzanne, and Mimir aren't too separated. Like Mimir and Patris are 2 points apart, but Mimir and Suzanne are only like 9 points apart. In a 50-point scale, not too massive. And hell, even Kurt isn't too far away from Bachiro and Roman and gang. But yeah, I guess my bigger surprise here would be Pergius and Miko and maybe Therese getting up into C tier, only because their absence, really. Pergius has like one thing. I mean, at least Almafani came down, interacted. And again, the same thing for Miko from just the one OVA. Same Teresa. All right, moving up to B tier. We got Geese, Nokapara, tops of B tier. I guess Nokapara was kind of a surprise, but not so much if you consider that one of the defining scores is appearance. And dude's a horseman. I mean, anyone who likes BoJack Horseman's probably gonna like up him a bit. There's just some categories that are made for specific characters to excel in. And of course, Geese is just entertaining. He has definitely got a lot of development over time, plus past interactions. There's just a lot of things you can score Geese on. Otherwise, we had Sarah, Soldat Heckler, Juliet, Minotia Dildana, Vera, Guys Dildana, Human God, Batigati, Lena Dildana, Rowan Migurdia, Saros Moros Greyrat, Hilda Moros Greyrat, Leo, Philip Moros Greyrat, Persina Aldolana, sorry, Adeladania, sorry, I'm never going to say the name right, Ricaria Migurdia, Shira, and Tall Hand. Again, Tall Hand is a surprise because he like vanishes for a good portion of the for the show and then reappears later and gets like a little bit of development. But sometimes it's surprising to see who gets scored above others. But also see what I mean here about characters that get put into the same arc together get scored about the same. Philip and Hilda Soros all right next to each other. Literally, these two are the same. I should have put them together, but both 30s. Dad just 1 point above. Rowan and Ricari just 1 point away from each other. But of course, again, Roxas is the one who's separated by that. But again, what do we know about the guy? Lena and Persina, just 1 point apart, same arc characters. Who else do we got? And Shira and Vera, what 3 points apart? But that's what I mean. But I guess it's only the exceptional characters from those arcs that get pushed up above them, like Susanna and Mimir and Patris, etc. But we have Sarah up here, because apparently. But then again, that's only 7 points apart. 7 points, not major. I guess I would only say major if you're like 10 points above your own arc. Alright, let's move up to A tier. Despite what I said in my last notes breakdown of the previous episode, Elenice Dragon Road uh, is pushing up there at the top of A tier. You also have Lilia Greyrat, the combination of the both, the top two of A tier. Moving along, though, we have Zenith Greyrat, Norn Greyrat, Roxy Magurdia, Shizaka Nanahoshi, Ghislaine Dadonia, Aisha Greyrat, Zanoba Chiron, Orsted, Cliff Grymore, Ariel Anemoy Asura, and the demon girl whose name I was never going to say right ever. I think the higher you go, the more expected it's going to be, and the more questionable you're going to have about who's an A tier, who's an S tier, right? Like, I love Aisha. She's a great character. I don't think that I dragged her down. I think I raised her up. But I will also say I don't think that my scores were very different from a lot of people's scores who voted. I think occasionally I would be like, no, that's like less than that or higher than that, but not like maybe a point or two at the most. But yeah, a lot of gray rats in A tier. We got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 greyrats in A tier. Also, Elenice and Cliff separated by what? Only 6 points. Roxy, of course, high above the rest of her family. But yeah, like I said, Ariel being a 37, but her brother, sorry, where did we leave her brother? Her brother being a 21. That's what I meant by point separation of arc. Grabble was in the same arc as Pillamon and, God, where is he at? Darius down here, but that's 20 to 21 range, whereas she got up to 37, which means she's an exceptional member of that arc, even though, yes, she carries on to the school arc as well. I'm just saying that she is the exception. Even like Cliff at 38, he also carries on the school arc, obviously, but he is carried on outside, well above Miko and Therese. But yeah, I think it should be obvious to everyone who is going to be in S tier. At the top of the score, well above everybody, even 2 points above the other S tier people, we have rudeus greyrat. And then, of course, Eris Boreas greyrat, and then Sylphet greyrat, doing a kind disservice to his second wife, Roxy McGurdia, who is one of these 3 love interests who just, didn't get to S tier with the rest of them. Very surprising to me, but then again, what can I say? I voted alongside the rest of you. And of course, we got Paul Greyrat and Rujard Superdia. I don't know. I guess that's also kind of surprising that Rujard got his way up here, but Ghislaine is down in A tier. But I guess that's a product of the fact that Ghislaine just disappeared for the longest time. Like, even when we saw Eris at the end of the last episode, Ghislaine wasn't there. So, no telling. But yeah, this is the top of the charts. You zoom out and you can see. I'm trying to get it all on the screen here. There we go. You zoom out and you can see that the bell curve, which typically I find when we're doing these, me with a group at least, the bell curve tends to go like C tier. Because C tier will usually be like way out there. The Mushoku Tensei bell curve goes up to B tier, which means that we have a larger number of characters that we want to see than characters that we think are below average. And I'm not speaking ill of anyone who's C tier and below. All characters are good in their own relative rights. Like I said, even Ada, even though she showed up for one scene in one episode really early on, I still remember exactly what she was about. I might not remember her kid's name, Somar, now, by the way, now that I remember. But, yeah, I think that speaks highly of the characterizations that happen in Mushoku Tensei. But at the same time, that's just kind of the show that Mushoku Tensei is. So, normally, when I'm doing this with somebody else, I'll typically do like a top 10 episode ranking, and then we'll go back and forth and compare our lists against one another. This time, since it was just me, I decided to go with 5 episodes only. So I went through 2 seasons. I tried to remember what episodes impacted me the most. I wrote them all down, and then I put them into an order. Now, it's entirely possible, based on how I feel in a given moment, that this list order could obviously change. In fact, it did change at least twice while I was writing it down. But for right now, as of this recording, this is the order of the episodes that I'm going to say are my top 5. I will say also I have honorable mentions at the very end, because I obviously wrote down more than 5 and then had to figure out which ones were making the list. So we'll see at the end. So number 5, I picked from season 1, episode 22, Dreams and Reality. Rudeus and Eris finally return to Fatoa, but sudden goodbyes and unpleasant news make their homecoming bittersweet. I've written out my thoughts here, so every one of these I'm including the little snippet of the what the episode was about, and then I'll just get into my thing. I know that this show is filled with episodes called turning points, but this is one that just shares the distinction of being so earth-shattering to the narrative of a story without bearing that foretelling marker. Rudy and Eris finally get back to their homes, only to discover that they are no longer there. Rougeard leaves the party, not to be seen, but for almost a full season later. We meet Ghislaine again, after a long time of her being absent, only for her to leave us again in the very next episode. We get to hear about how serious the situation really is for Eris in the political movements of the Greyrat family. We also find out that her parents are dead, and not for nothing. We don't hear a lot about any of the others of the household surviving either. All leading up to Eris having a night with Rudy before deciding she needs to leave, setting Rudy up for his own journey in the next episode, and then, the next season. So, all these things together is why I feel like Dreams and Reality is my 5th. So yeah, I'm sorry, now I'm wavering here. Do I call them the best or most important to me? Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe those are just the same thing. Maybe best and most important are just the factors that I'm bringing together. My number 4, Season 2, Episode 17, My Older Brother's Feelings. Norn shuts herself in her dorm room and refuses to attend classes. Haunted by the specter of his past life, Rudeus sets out to solve his sister's problems, only to discover that he's the cause. This one was super impactful for Rudy and Norn, and one I had to weigh against a Reunion for this spot on the list. While Reunion really touched me in Rudy considering who Paul was and what they meant to him, in the midst of their familial spat, this episode dealt with some of the unresolved fallout of the episode leading into Reunion, while at the same time helping Rudy recognize a problem that he had trouble getting over and help someone close to him do what he couldn't, and what others failed to help him deal with as well. I think this is why I chose it over Reunion, as it hit that much harder for me. I think it also becomes that much more impactful moving forwards, as Norn becomes a character in the story, rather than a lingering question in the background. And I will admit there might be an element of recency bias, which is to say it's been a while since we watched season 1. And season 2 episodes are just like that much closer. So when I have to think about which thing struck me more emotionally, like I said here, Reunion or My Older Brother's Feelings, it's kind of hard not to think back to My Older Brother's Feelings as happening more recently. Alright, my number 3, Season 2, Episode 22, Parents. The rescue party reaches the heart of the teleporter labyrinth and confronts its guardian, but when the monster shrugs off Rudeus' magic, they realize that they may have bitten off more than they can chew. The second best fight scene, in my opinion, but easily the most impactful moving forwards. Rudy loses a hand, Paul dies, Zenith might well be disabled for the rest of her life. As far as where do we go from here episodes go, this one takes the cake as well. For being so high on the list, though, I don't have all that much to say about this episode. It was all emotion, edge-of-your-seat stuff, without a lot of things that needed contextualization or breakdown. We finally got to where I'd been rallying for us to go since the start of the season, and ended up paying a terrible price for it. Alright, number 2. Season 1, Episode 21, Turning Point 2. Rudeus, Eris, and Rujard are nearing the edge of their journey, but a chance encounter in a snowy mountain pass threatens to put a premature end to their adventures. Some real emotional depth to this episode, with, I'd argue, the best fight scene in the series. Now, granted, the fight scene in Parents is more involved, complex, and important to the show going forwards, but this one is more compact and easier to understand while still showing off some beautiful animation. It's our first time seeing Rujard get pushed back by superior force. Also, Rudy using his speechless magic to inflate his lungs with air and prop himself up for just one last shot of Orsted. Chef's kiss. The idea that for us anime onlys, this could be the end of Rudy seemed very real. This, of course, also puts into Eris's mind things that she considers over the next 2 episodes that change the entire trajectory of the show. Let's also not forget our first time meeting Nanahoshi and Orsted. Very important, very good episode. I don't think that my number one is going to be controversial at all. I don't see my number one being anybody else's. I don't see my number one being anything but anyone else's number one pick as well. That would be Season 2, Episode 24. Also, again, my argument for maybe recency bias being a thing. Succession. Rudeus arrives home, frantic that something may have gone wrong in his absence, but the conversation waiting for him may become disastrous in their own right. How can he introduce a new wife to a family still reeling from Paul's death? I don't know if this is just recency bias speaking, and go ahead and tell me if I'm wrong, but for me, there hasn't been an episode with so many emotional punches in it as this one. Norn's breakdown at the news that they had done everything that they could have, and the death of their father to save their mother was the best outcome, was so visceral and real that it was one of the 2 biggest parts of the episode for me. The other has to be Rudy's conversation at Paul's gravestone and the whoosh of air as he's going to leave. I know it's just a monologue recapping certain details of events and his feelings about them, but that's emotional resolution to a whole arc of stuff. You better believe that whatever emotion you saw on my face during the recording was 100 times more when I rewatched it alone. Lastly, regardless of my anti-harem arguments, I appreciated Norn's response to the whole Roxy situation, both initially and after the fact. She expressed a lot of what I would have thought in her initial problem, but didn't run off or anything later, because this is post-episode 17 Norn, and the show is giving her that development too. That is my top 5 episodes of Mushoku Tensei. I, of course, have honorable mentions. The episodes that I wrote down alongside those and then determined that those were my top 5 and left those behind. So, in no particular order, I Want to Tell You, which is Season 2, Episode 12. Sylphette reveals herself and Rudeus admits his feelings, but even that isn't enough to cure what ails him. After their heart-to-heart, Sylphette sets out to end his problem once and for all. It's a very emotional episode. I think you can tell from my list the emotional episodes are my emotional ones. I mentioned this before. Season 1, Episode 17, Reunion. In the aftermath of their disastrous reunion, Paul and Rudeus reflect on their actions and look for a way forward. Again, that moment where Rudy talks to Paul and realizes Paul is just kind of like where he was at that age, but doing so much of a better job. And then they come together, I guess, again, as father and son, for the first time, really. Very emotional for me. It was a really tough choice between that and my brother's feelings. Next, Season 1, Episode 23, Wake Up and Take a Step. Rudeus sinks into depression following Eris' departure. As he struggles to get back on his feet, that many people he's met continue their own journeys. For me, it's all about not so much. See, the thing that dragged this down on the list and off of the top 5 for me is the initial depression that Rudy shows in the early parts of that episode. It's good enough that we see how he is literally not dealing with the problems that he's facing. But for me, it's the literal wake up and take a step at the very end of the episode, which had me considering it for the top five. The very beginning where he sees it and he's crying out loud. I don't know. There's something about the crying scenes of the show that just fucking get to me every time. But his resolution to move forwards at the end of the episode, and then starts season three. Sorry, season two. But ultimately, honorable mention. And my last honorable mention, season two, episode 18, Turning Point 3. Life is looking up for Rudeus. His sisters are settling in. He has plenty of time for friends and family until an announcement from Sylphie and an unexpected letter upend his idyllic school life. For me, of course, it's obviously the announcement, being pregnant, having a kid, but also the Elenice as a family member now was also pretty big. Unfortunately, I just don't think they matched the emotional impacts of my top five picks, mostly because the promise of possibly being a father one day is something the show would rip away from Rudy, I felt like. Also, it was more of a surprise. And when I say ripped away, I meant this show does some vicious stuff, as we found out with Paul and Zenith. So, could not prepare myself for that. That was just a on edge sort of thing. And again, it was more surprise because it's hard to think of Rudy as a dad. I'm sure the show is going to eventually build us up to it, especially with his speech at Paul's gravestone. But in the moment, it was hard to consider. So yeah, those are my honorable mentions. That was my top five. And here, before we wrap up at the very end, we do this live on Twitch, and of course, we've got comments in the Twitch. So just to respond to a couple of things here. I forgot to ask, now that polygamy is a thing, what do you think of Eris and her obvious return? How do you visualize the scene? I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to think about it, because again, I'm already anti-harem. We're already introducing it as a thing. It wasn't that great when it was first being considered. I was rallying against it. I didn't want it to happen. I was literally right where Norn was. How can you do this? But we're here now. I'd like to keep it as capped, as contained as possible. And yeah, Eris. I think I brought this up in the notes I had for episode 23 when we talked about it at the time. Eris had her chance, and I recognize what she did and why she did it. But her time was then. Rudy's time and Sylphet's time should have been now. But Sylphet sacrifices herself, or she sacrifices her emotion to ensure that Rudy is happy. And Rudy is happy if Roxy is happy. So, yeah. Like I said, it's a dick move towards Sylphet. I can see why she's doing it. I don't agree with it. But ultimately, if I consider these people to be real people, then, they can make their own decisions. I can be unhappy with their decisions, but obviously I'm not going to rally against their life, their choice, right? And lastly here, a great top five, episode 21 of season 1, Turning Point 2, is the one I would personally put as my number one of my favorites. It is the episode that pushed the huge snowball that was accumulating because it truly changed the trajectory of the show. The mentality of the main cast, the introduction of important characters in the future, and changed my opinion of the one I initially thought was an ally, Man God. I don't know. For me, it's coolness factor. which propels Turning Point 2 up the top 5 list of episodes. But I don't know, maybe it makes Rudy have to reconsider the possibility of his own death, but I think that happens earlier in season 1. Can't remember the name of the episode. The one where they're all in the forest. The Forest of Death? No, that is a future episode. The one where Blaze dies. In the kids, where he's reconsidering, no, hold back, let them fail a little bit, and then we'll go and save them, and everyone will think better of us. And then a bunch of kids die, and then Blaze dies, and he's like, oh no, I'm thinking about everything wrong. I think that sets up that internal monologue well before Turning Point 2 does. Turning Point 2, I think, changes that thought process for Eris more so than that Demon Forest thing was. Because for Eris, her concern is that Rudy almost died, whereas Rudy had these thoughts back then anyway. Also, because he kind of dealt with that with Nokapara as well, when he was going to take the whole city down with him. But, yeah. I see where you're coming from. For me, it was just, best fight in the series. And additional little emotional elements that propped it up higher. But yeah, no, I think that is it for Mushoku Tensei, I guess, until we get to season 3. Because this is not only what I agree on for the character tier list, this is what you guys voted on too. This is partly you're to blame. That's my top 5 episodes until we get to season 3, and then I can weigh those against whatever happens in season 3. So until then, I will see you in season 3. And I have been Theta. This has been Stoneface Reactions, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stoneface Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?